Welcome to the Sister Mentors podcast. This is an exciting time for us. Sister Mentors has been nurturing the next generation of women of color leaders for 25 years. Our work centers the needs and dreams of women and girls of color in the face of deep-seated institutional inequities found in the educational system. The lives of over 100 women and girls of color have been changed by Sister Mentors. These women and girls have evolved in astounding ways, and with the help of Sister Mentors, they are on their way to earning higher education degrees, particularly PhDs. On this podcast, I will speak to some of the mentors and mentees about their lives and educational journeys. These women and girls will tell their moving stories of who they are, where they come from, and how Sister Mentors was instrumental in keeping them on their educational paths. In this episode, we have Dr. Susan Ozawa Perez. Dr. Ozawa Perez is an economist and social impact specialist. She was considered to be a gifted disruptor and felt the call of activism. With that, she decided to work within the system to be her own advocate against the racism and sexism she encountered in the educational system. I am your host, Kahmeela Adams. Thanks for joining me as we celebrate the bold past and fierce future of Sister Mentors and count down to the 25th anniversary here on the Sister Mentors podcast.
We are counting down to Sister Mentors' 25th anniversary in fall 2022.
All right, Dr. Susan Perez, welcome to the Sister Mentors podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I am so happy to meet with you today and get to know about your journey through your educational journey, as well as just your journey in life in general, and also with Sister Mentors. And so I guess we can just, before we really get into all of that history, how are you today? Everything good? Is it a good day going?
I'm good. Yes, thank you so much for asking. It's Friday. I'm just ready for that weekend. So
I know. And it always
been a short week for me, but I'm just ready for Friday. So.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I don't know, have you been just working remotely for the most part these past months? Or?
Yeah, my job is completely remote. So the good and the bad with that. But it's I work in finance, so it's been a stressful week. So. Oh,
yikes! All right, so let's try to tiptoe away from the stress a little bit for right now, and let's go through your journey. Tell me, who is Susan Perez?
Who's Susan Perez? Susan Ozawa Perez. That's my maiden name. Susan Perez is probably a million people. I am, I can start with the credentials and the whole thing. I am a trained economist. I'm the senior portfolio manager at Impact Investors, which is a socially responsible registered investment advisor. We work with individuals and foundations to invest people's assets according to their values. And I am a mom of a 5-year-old. I am now back to being a Los Angelino. I just moved back to LA, which is where I'm from. Very, very happy to be home. Yeah, I'm an activist who ended up in finance, and I'm a graduate of Sister Mentors and a big champion of Sister Mentors too.
All right, so let's go back, way back. Tell me about your earliest school memory. Do you have
I do. It's so fun thinking about these questions. No, my earliest school memory, if you can call it that, which I guess it is kindergarten. And I went to this place called Kinderland, and it was run by a German woman who married a Japanese man. And so she had kids that looked like me and my sister. And so she kind of favored us, which was really amazing. We're also German Japanese. Oh. And so it was really, really fun, but it was this play-based Montessori kind of unstructured play wonderland. And I think it was great. I think it was great for me. Formal education started to get to be a bummer in first grade. I remember being like, what is this? But later I did get a spark after having a really good teacher in fourth grade. Who I just adored, and she was really great and lit the spark again for me. So because I was bored a lot, I was a little bit of a disruptor, and nobody identified me as like as a gifted or talented student, they were just like, she's the one who's making all the noise, cracking the jokes, and just in the way of my lesson plan.
Oh, I love it.
But she kind of was like, okay, look, she had me actually tested a number of times. And then I think through that was like, oh, she's actually bright, so maybe she's bored,
Right.
Like, maybe that's what's going on. Things that I really enjoyed were things that I could kind of do on my own, which is so funny. I ended up with a PhD, but I actually didn't really like structured school very much. But I loved learning, and I had just an intellectual curiosity. And so that's planting a seed for lots of people out there who may not like their school or education or think they're a bad student, but have curiosity and have a hunger for knowledge. And so don't let the system fail you, like Right. It's not about you failing the system. It's about the system failing you. So, but I made it to college. I was able to get into college, and I got into UC Santa Cruz. And I was told again by a teacher, don't go there. There's criminals who are teaching. And he was talking about Angela Davis. And I was like, wow, that's where I want to go.
It's like, there's criminals and teachers. It's like, okay, yeah, I absolutely would like to sign up for that class immediately. Thank you. Thanks for the heads up, bud.
So, and I went to UC Santa Cruz, and it was a great fit. A lot of activists and a lot of ethnic student organizations doing activism. And so it was a great fit for me in some ways. Some ways it was also a culture shock because there were so few people of color, and affirmative action was repealed during that time. And we fought that and lost it. School for me it's where I cut my teeth and kind of learned my politics. And I realized, again, I need to learn some history that's comprehensive and tells the real story. Mm-hmm. So I started off as American Studies, which is, ethnic studies elsewhere. But then I ended up in women's studies and community studies because I wanted to work abroad and work for nonprofits abroad. And women, feminist international movements were really interesting to me. And so that's what I focused on for my undergrad in women's studies. But it was great. I was able to just take whatever classes I wanted, and I ended up getting 2 majors and had a great time.
One could ask why Dr. Ozawa Perez was drawn to activism. Her formative years took place in LA during the race riots, a time when news and politics were heightened with racial and gender dynamics. Dr. Ozawa Perez is also a second-generation American and heard firsthand about the horrors her family had experienced fleeing to America in order to avoid persecution.
I grew up in a neighborhood with a lot of first-generation, second-generation Americans. And my family wasn't too different in the sense that my mom, only came to this country when she was in college, and she grew up abroad. Her stepfather, who raised her, was Russian Jew American. Had the experience of his family fleeing from Russia, from persecution, and he was a war correspondent. So she grew up, she's English and German, Austrian, and American by nationality, but she grew up in East Germany and former Yugoslavia, and then went to a socialist boarding school in England. So she was really not American. She looked white and she fit in, but she never really felt like she fit in. So even though my mom is passing and no one would ever know, I don't feel like she's very American. And neither, I never felt really really wanted her to be more American than she was. But anyway, so that's my mom's story. She was a little bit of an outsider, and she would always tell me, she was really interesting because she's a different race from me. But she would always say, you know, race is not the only difference that tears apart people and countries. And growing up for her, very much religion was that way, nationality was that way, economics, all these other different isms that existed that she saw too. So she was really helpful in building my consciousness about that. But my dad's Japanese American. He is third generation, and so I'm fourth generation. Been in California. They've been in California since the turn of the century, since Japanese-Russo War. He was actually born in a concentration camp in Hart Mountain. And he weighed 2 pounds, and he was like a miracle baby, because his sister actually was born and then died as an infant in camp because of the conditions and because of my grandmother's health. It was really, really hot in the summer and really, really cold in the winter, and they were just in, like plywood shacks, basically,
right.
That they had kind of built. The context of, growing up, I was thinking about it, and, in the 80s, like the beginning of the 80s were pretty cool for Asians, like Bruce Lee time, 70s, 80s, it was like pretty cool. And then, when Japan started rising and became a power, an economic power, and was really perceived as a threat, there was a lot of anti-Asian sentiment, especially with the displacement of the unionized workers and car manufacturing. And the killing of Vincent Chin happened when I was young too, and anyway, so I grew up with a lot of racial epithets and a lot of hostility against Japanese in particular. But then I grew up around a lot of veterans as well, and so veterans of Vietnam and of Korea and of World War II. So all of the enemies looked like us for decades and decades and decades. And so growing up around veterans, I kind of got a lot of epithets and a lot of stereotypes and a lot of harassment and things like that. So anyway, I think, growing up, I always identified as Asian, and Asian American and Japanese American specifically. I always felt kindred spirit with people who had, been minorities of any kind and kind of escaped persecution. And I also, and I felt like a person of color, a kid of color growing up too. So those things are really well ingrained in me, which is why it's funny. Later on, there's a lot of, people who later in life have been like, oh, you identify as a woman of color. And I'm like, nobody thinks I'm a white man over here, right?
So let's go back to when you decided to pursue a doctorate. What influenced that decision?
Yeah, so I ended up, for my undergraduate degree in women's studies and community studies, I did work abroad on the issue of trafficking in women in Asia. And the organization I worked for was in Manila in the Philippines. And it was during the Asian economic crisis, 1998. And we, the things that we saw and did were kind of palliative, really, when I think back about it. Country was at that point, 70% literate, very bright, competent people, beautiful, competent people. So the issue there was really poverty. And as the country integrated within, its capital markets into the global system, there were a lot of failures. There was a lot of massive disruptions with macroeconomic crises that happened. And I didn't understand what I was seeing. I didn't understand why we were seeing the privation and desperation that we were seeing. And I felt like when you go to a family that has sold their daughter for a bag of rice, and where do you start, right? Where do you start in that situation? At that point, I realized we're dealing in that kind of desperate situation. Nothing that you can do is going to be a good option, right? the system itself. There's the circumstances that cause that desperation really need to be addressed. And I felt like because of Santa Cruz, I had a very strong basis in class, class dynamics and struggles. I had a strong basis in race and gender, but I didn't have that final piece, which was the broader economic and global economic piece about power and how it operated. And so it was just a deficit. And I knew on my own with economics and finance, it's not something I would do self-taught. And I also knew that as an American, I had privilege in this country, and the influence that I could have over policy in this country would be felt globally. And so I did a little privilege assessment, and I was like, okay, well, let's get this degree, fill this gap, and then move in this way, right? Mm. So I didn't know exactly what role, what job I would have, right? Or how I would make money. Right. But that was my curiosity too. What I saw as something lacking that was frustrating me about my own deficits, and then something that I thought I could contribute to.
Okay, so how would you say that Sister Mentors helped you in your journey to your PhD, to getting your PhD?
Well, I would give them all the credit. I think there's, not only the accountability structure, but the meaning and the motivation, not only as a peer to so many other women of color who are, dealing with similar things as me, in very, white male spaces of privilege and power, but with the girls that we mentored, I think especially when you are being looked to and you are perceived as a mentor, there's kind of no option. You just have to be a good example for them, right? So it removed from me the possibility of any exit door that I could say okay, I'm gonna let this go, And what I would say is that it gave me the structure also and accountability to kind of every meeting come in with my my goals, my reporting on my goals, setting new goals, and even we exchanged drafts of proposals and dissertation chapters and things like that. And I don't know, I felt that that space and that accountability with people that I respected so much really were critical in helping me finish. I really can't imagine doing it without that, because it was, it took an amount of confidence and perseverance that I just didn't have on my own. I could, they really were like, okay, this door has closed. You have to keep knocking, or go on this door, try this route, and keep trying, and keep working, and keep going at something in different ways, being persistent and doing all of these things that if it was just me, I would have been like, oh, I'm done. But, especially, and Dr. Lewis was always very clear about, this isn't just for you, because once you get in, you have, you are creating a legacy for others, and you should be opening the door and be, facilitating and giving back and contributing and lifting up once you achieve this. So this is not a personal achievement. This is not a economics individual success story, right? It's a story of collective uplifts. And so it always put it into perspective too, that it's this is not just this thing that I want to do for myself, right? It's that and something that will help more people, right? And lead to transformational change.
After 12 years of very strenuous and dedicated coursework, Dr. Ozawa Perez has a message for the Black and brown girls out there who are considering pursuing higher education.
Know yourself, right? Know yourself, but there's certain fields where you're going to be able to make a huge impact with those credentials behind your name. And you're going to be allowed into rooms, and you're going to be in spaces, and you're going to be given space within those spaces, or you're going to take that space within those spaces without imposter syndrome, right? And advocate for people who are not in that room, who you understand and and you represent. And you're going to change the composition of those rooms eventually by being in those rooms. But without those degrees, we don't have a chance, right? So you guys, we have to get in there. And so it's part of the movement. If you have something to contribute, you owe it to yourself and your community to better yourself and grow and learn as much as you can and get the degrees to show for it, right? And take your space in leadership in the world. It's not easy, and nobody's going to give it to you, and you're going to maybe fight the whole way, and maybe you're not. Maybe you're going to breeze through, right? But do it, especially if you have a calling or a tug or curiosity, do it. And I truly believe everybody deserves as much education as they want to pursue, and don't let anybody stop you or tell you that you don't deserve that. That is education, that is knowledge. And that's, to my mind, that should be a right. A fundamental right, the right to pursue knowledge and education. Don't forget where you came from after all that's done, Don't forget, and don't try to just succeed. Don't lose yourself. Don't lose your soul within the process. Everything is competitive. Everything in graduate school is based on a curve. And people will lie, cheat, and steal, But don't become that. And you're going to have a role in history. You're going to make a difference. Sometimes you work twice as hard and it's invisible, but sometimes you work twice as hard and you get a PhD at the end of your name, right? So don't skip out on getting your due, right? For all the work that you're doing, because I know that people are doing that work to get ahead. So yeah, that's what I would say. And like I said, it helps you publish and start organizations and start firms and be in leadership, be at the table. And I don't know without my PhD that I would have that. I honestly don't. And I'm a bright, competent person who cares passionately about these things. But yeah, I may often be the only person of color in the room, and also the only PhD in the room a lot of times. And so I think those things are not unrelated. That might be my ticket into that.
Right.
I'm going to use it.
Right on. Well, thank you so much, Susan, for your time and sharing this journey with me, with the audience, because this has been an eye opener. Like I learned a lot, and first and foremost, but I mostly appreciate you just for being you. Like, you're an awesome woman. Like
Thank you so much. Let's hang out.
I know, right? Like,
thank you so much. And thank you for your work too. You're amazing. So thank you for doing this, and shout out to Dr. Shireen Lewis for connecting us. She is also an amazing person.
Yes, she is. I'm happy to have met her this past year. For more information on Sister Mentors, a project of EduSeed, please visit sistermentors.org. You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn as Sister Mentors. Please subscribe, rate, and review the show wherever you get your podcasts, and don't be afraid to share. This podcast was produced by Rugged Angel Productions for Sister Mentors.